You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Quick heads up before we start. There are descriptions of suicide in this podcast that may be uncomfortable for some people. Listener discretion is advised.
Take your mark.
So I see my sister swimming in. We've done this relay with each other probably over 20 times already. We might have a medal chance in the relay because of another disqualification in the heats that morning by China.
Quah Ting Wen was part of a quartet made up of two pairs of sisters. She was swimming with her sister Quah Ting Wen and another pair of siblings, Letitia and Lavinia Sim. They were representing Singapore in the women's 4x100 meter relay finals at the Asian Games in Hangzhou.
All I know was that I felt like I wanted it, and I wanted it so badly, not just for myself, but for my teammates. And my teammates in the stands, and my parents in the stands, and all my other coaches back home.
Ting Wen was to go last, taking the freestyle right after her sister, Ting Wen.
I actually knew the moment when I was doing the relay exchange for my sister that I might have made a mistake. I'm seeing too much of her body as I'm taking off. I finished the race, I touched the wall. I don't even look at the scoreboard. The announcer starts talking about which team disqualified and what the mistake was. I knew right away that it was my fault.
Singapore was disqualified, and the bronze medal was given to Hong Kong. Ting Wen had jumped 0.1 seconds too early.
I understand that there's a grieving period for me, and I allow myself to feel all these negative feelings, to replay certain images in my mind. I can't live in that moment forever. If not, then I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to be alone. At some point, people will move on, and I do not want to be that person who wallows in that moment forever.
Physical injuries are par for the course for any athlete. But behind the blood, sweat, and tears to get to the finishing line, another insidious foe lurks. This adversary exists in the mind. The gladiator mentality that often helps these professional athletes push their bodies to the limits can be a double-edged sword, one that sends an athlete's mental health off the cliff. My name is Tiffany Ang, and in this special CNA podcast, I dive into the mental health struggles of elite athletes. You'll hear more from swimmer Ting Wen and from another interview my colleagues did with MMA star Angela Lee-Pucci. And finally, I speak to a sports psychologist to find out how he helps these professional athletes cope with their mental health. Ting Wen, how are you doing now?
I'm trying to be okay. I'm still in the process of processing the competition, but I think I will put it on hold for a little bit just because my season isn't exactly done.
I'm in the studio with Quah Ting Wen, just days after her relay team was disqualified from the Asian Games finals. The 31-year-old swimmer is still thinking about her mistake of getting off the blocks a split second too early. A mistake, she says, she last made when she was a young girl. And the guilt that followed crushed her.
Actually hearing the girls be happy and watching their reactions and then right away having all of it taken away, that was the hardest part. So there was a lot of guilt after and regret.
And the next day you posted on Instagram, you actually wrote a very beautiful post talking about how you're feeling at that point of time. And I'm just going to read a part that stood out to me. You said, "I'm writing this to try to get it out of my head. I'm writing this to try to stop reliving the moment. I'm writing this to express the remorse I feel and the shame I carry and the blame I bear." So a lot of it is, like you said, writing to get it out of your head. So why did you choose to talk about it so openly, almost immediately after something so painful?
You know, people go through very private struggles, right? what we were doing at the Asian Games in Hangzhou. Not just me, but my teammates and the rest of Team Singapore. Like, we are there representing our country, and in a way it's a very public thing that we are doing. I feel like in a way it was a way for me to try and make up also to, I think, all the media that were waiting for us after the relay. I don't even remember what it was like, but I just remember I was in tears and close to hysterical, and I just ran past the media zone, and I feel like that was a little bit rude to all the journalists waiting. So in a way, I think it was for me to also apologize to the journalists and my teammates, for leaving them there in the media zone. But at the same time, we were there to represent Singapore. It was a very public thing, and I felt the need to apologize, I think, to people.
That's actually quite a big burden to bear, right? Because some people would say you don't have to do that. You don't have to apologize because you don't owe anyone anything. But is that sort of a mental pressure that you expect of yourself, that in a way you owe something to the media or the fans or people who watch the sport to say something?
On the sports side, you have the coaches, the support staff, everyone who's been there with us every step of the way, very behind the scenes stuff, right? But they are there. They're working just as hard as us in their own fields to make sure that at the end of the day, we get on the podium and we get the glory. So in a way, I feel like I owe these people to be able to represent them the best I can on that stage, because in a way that brings to light their effort and their work also, and everything that they've done for all of us up to this point. People might say it's okay, like, you can just move on, we're not upset. But the pressure I put on myself, it's not because other people are putting pressure on me.
Yeah.
I put it on myself. I feel like it is this desire to do right by all these people who have supported us this whole time, and also to prove to myself, right, that swimming was the right decision for me.
But this isn't the first time Ting Wen has had to deal with immense mental pressure. At the age of 10, she first dipped her toes in the competitive swimming scene. By 12, she began representing Singapore. At 13, when many of her peers were starting to navigate teenage life, she went for her first World Championships and Southeast Asian Games. The shuttle between school, home, and pool became a familiar routine for her. And eventually, her social circles started to look different.
A lot of my teammates or classmates had retired from either swimming. All my secondary school classmates had gone on to pursue careers and climb the corporate ladder and or start having different social circles. And I was at that point 25, and I was still doing the same thing that I had been doing when we were 8, swimming, which to some people they were like, it's just a hobby, it's a choice, it's just something you do for fun. And for me, it was trying to wrap my head around the fact that I was choosing to do this fun thing as my job, as a livelihood. So I think I started questioning myself a lot, my identity. It was hard when my siblings also left in 2017. Both of them left at the same time for university overseas, and I was just feeling very alone, quite lost, and I didn't really know who to talk to about things I was going through in the pool.
Was there a sports psychologist?
Yes, I actually started seeing the sports psych
So that
in
was
2017.
where the sports psych pointed out that you could
Yes.
have a problem.
Yes, it was end of 2017 where she very gently suggested that perhaps I go see someone, not a sports psych, to kind of get diagnosed properly.
Okay.
Which I did, and that was when I was started on this nightly medication to help with chemical imbalances in the brain.
So when that was suggested to you, what was your reaction?
There was a lot of shame, I think, when I was first told that I would have to be relying on this tiny pill every night just to be okay the next day. Life itself is difficult enough. Everyone goes through a lot of pain and struggle. And it's the same for athletes, but I think sometimes people look at athletes. I used to be that person who would look at athletes and be like, we have to be physically strong and even stronger mentally to be able to do the sport that we do. And to push our bodies this way, we have to be tough. There's no space for weakness. There's no space for being reliant on anything. It's all about
Pushing through.
pushing through the pain yourself. Anything less than that, then you're not worth the sport. Like, you're not worth being up there with the rest of the greats. And so that was the mindset I had before. It took me a while to make it actually a habit to take it at night because I was so resistant to taking the medication. But I did eventually, and I came around to the mindset where I understood that sometimes it's not wrong to get help, even though I might be in a space where mental fortitude is applauded and expected of athletes. Yeah.
Which brings me to the next question, which is, why do we have this sort of mindset that athletes should have the mental fortitude?
I think because to compete at such a high level, we do have to be very mentally tough. I was actually sharing this with my brother the other day when we were in the Games Village in Hangzhou. And we were just looking out at like the Games Village and all the different athletes from different countries walking around. Sports almost feels like a tiny little world of its own. And it's very simple. The hierarchy is dictated by who is the best in their field and their respective sports. But if you are the best, you are at the top of the food chain.
People expect athletes to be mentally strong, but they are human as well.
Dr. Harry Lim is a senior sports psychologist with the Singapore Sport Institute, and I managed to get in touch with him while he was at the Asian Games, taking care of athletes from Team Singapore.
My role here is to provide a sounding board to our athletes, as well as to make sure that if anything comes up, like say if they've had a tough race or in preparation for the upcoming competition, my role is to help them to make sure that they are able to manage the stresses that comes along with competing at the Asian Games, where there's a lot more attention and pressure as opposed to a regular competition.
With around 10 to 15 athletes under his charge, Dr. Harry says he sees some common stresses that trigger these athletes, causing their mental health to spiral. These include poor results, a lack of proper rest in between seasons, and being constantly under the watchful glare of sports fans.
They're almost sort of like celebrities. Their lives are out there in the public sphere. So I think they get scrutinized a lot more than you and I would.
That's right.
And also with the proliferation of social media, that scrutiny is even more magnified. And where every action, every result, every mistake, it's subjected to public opinion, expectations, and discourse. Particularly in this day and age, maybe 20 years ago when there was no social media, there was a bit less. You meet only the people in the streets who hurl abuse at you. But at this point in time, you have a lot of people in the online sphere who can be commenting on a lot of things that has to do with the athlete's performance.
Another point of stress could also come from misaligned expectations between the athlete and their coach, says Dr. Harry. This is when he, as a sports psychologist, will step in.
In sport, we know a very strong coach-athlete relationship is vital for performance, and usually when that is not at its optimal state, then we can have athletes or coaches actually present with certain frustrations, with certain expectations on what that should be. A big part of the job that we do is to try to smoothen out this relationship. Sometimes it's about misaligned expectations or misaligned understanding. Sometimes it's about expectations. Sometimes it's about communication, because we also have a lot of coaches that are foreign. So sometimes culturally we have different understanding of what it means to do certain things, or our understanding of sport could be different. So I think a lot of times it's about making sure that they're communicating well and effectively in order to have better outcomes in terms of their sporting performance.
Why is it that for some people, mental health is still a stigma or a taboo topic to talk about within the elite athlete circles?
There may be this misguided expectation that, because you're an athlete, you should have that sort of toughness. In sport, obviously we like to celebrate the wins, but how often can you win?
Yeah.
Right? There's only 3 people that can end up at the podium at any one time. You will get a lot more losses than you will get wins. These people, day in, day out, put in the kind of hours and the work to be at their sport. It's not easy. It's not something that somebody who doesn't have that kind of resilience, it's very difficult to do that. It's like going to the gym every day for 2-3 hours, pushing yourself to the limit.
I will be honest, I was never fully transparent, or I never fully spoke about everything that I was feeling. I thought that it was normal, what I was feeling, and I just thought that I needed to keep on going, just power through.
In early October this year, top mixed martial arts fighter Angela Lee-Pucci announced her retirement from the sport. She was just 27 years old. There were already rumors that she might bow out of the scene after her sister's death the year before. But what shocked fans was that she revealed a month earlier that a car crash she was involved in 2017 wasn't an accident. It was a suicide attempt.
For me, it's been 6 years now since I was in a very dark place, feeling very alone, and I felt like I was dealing with a lot of pressure, and at the same time I feel like I couldn't speak up about it or say anything to anyone. And so that resulted in me, purposely crashing my car.
Angela was only 20 years old then, but had become the first female world champion of one championship, a combat sports league. In a post written on sports platform The Players Tribune, Angela described her life then as having it all. She had successfully defended her title, was engaged, and looking forward to planning her wedding. But just before her last title defense for that year, things started to unravel. She was trying to cut her weight for the competition, but with 2 weeks to go before the fight, she still had more than 5 kilograms to lose. And the shame of possibly missing the fight intensified. Angela told herself, quote, "If you don't get this done, you'll lose everything." In a desperate attempt to escape the fight, Angela first tried to break her arm. When that proved unsuccessful, she got in a car at 4 a.m. and drove towards a mountainside road in Hawaii. Angela does not remember the moment of the crash, but when she opened her eyes, she found herself in an overturned car surrounded by shattered glass. Passing motorists eventually rescued her from the wreckage.
In the fight world, where our main objective is to be strong and to not show weakness and to not show vulnerability, we put up this shield or this mask. Oftentimes, I think that's why, as fighters, it's very hard. The battles that we go through mentally, we feel like we're very alone in that because we can never really voice out how we're truly feeling. The way that we are taught in martial arts is to be strong, be tough, do what it takes to win. It's hard because speaking about that kind of mindset, it's actually helped me a lot in life. It's gotten me to where I am today. It's gotten me to the top to become a world champion. But a lot of times, I think in that traditional kind of a mindset, there lacks a balance. Strange thing is that I had a very good relationship with my family. We were very open and loving. But you can have a very close and loving family, but also lack that safe environment for these uncomfortable topics that need to be addressed sometimes. These conversations are very difficult to talk about for both parties, for myself, for my family, but for the sake of my mental health and for them to better understand me as a person, it's completely necessary. It's crucial that families have that conversation.
All these years, only her husband, Bruno Pucci, knew the truth behind that night. and he stood unwaveringly by her. She admits that there are still difficult days for her, but that she has learned different ways to suppress her inner demons, including penning down her thoughts. It's a method Ting Wen tells me she also uses.
Writing helps take everything out of my mind, put it on a piece of paper. It's kind of a way for me to try and compartmentalize. Another thing I do is I have a list for myself for when things get very tough. When I'm in a bad place, I'm feeling very low or empty, or I'm going through something really bad. I have a list of things that are very simple, but also things that are controllable that I can do to first take care of the basic things.
Okay.
Very, very simple things like, have I eaten?
Right.
Have I gotten enough water that day?
Right.
Have I taken a shower? Am I sleeping enough?
Because these are things you realize you forget when
Yes.
your mind goes to a very dark space.
Yep. And sometimes when I'm in a dark space and it feels like there's no hope, then, I kind of let go of everything else. So this is not just for myself, right? I'm very lucky to have people around me who love me and support me. And in a way that this is also for people around me to kind of know in that moment, instead of,
Is she doing this?
yes,
Right?
So if I'm not doing those things, then it's easy for these people to be like, okay, this is how Ting functions, and this is what we can help her do first.
So they can do regular check-ins, like they can ask you, have you eaten?
Yes.
Have you drunk your water this hour?
Yes.
Okay.
Very simple things, but you'll be surprised, like getting just an extra few hours of sleep will make such a big difference to your mental space.
Besides teaching athletes commonly used techniques like breathing and relaxation, sports psychologist Dr. Harry also believes in helping younger athletes reframe their identities. He says this will help them cope with the inevitable losses.
If you are trusted into the limelight very early on and you don't have the right support and environment to buffer you through that, it can be quite difficult. The worry is that the sport is all they ever know, and then when things don't go well, they kind of tag their self-worth to the results that they get as an athlete. I think we see that manifest in identity issues. As a team, we also strongly encourage our athletes really to de-link that self-worth from that athletic identity, and also to understand that they're more than just athletes. We take a humans first approach and really help them to figure out the other identities that they possess, so that even when results don't go well, which inevitably they will at some point in time, your confidence, your self-worth doesn't get affected or impacted so much, because you know that you're much more than just the results that you get as an athlete.
For retired MMA athlete Angela, she's taking big strides in her journey to heal. Having lost her younger sister Victoria Lee to suicide a year ago, Angela decided to start a non-profit organization called Fight Story. The aim is to start a movement for mental wellness through combat sports, but Angela stresses that it's not only for fighters.
I wanted this organization to be something that everyone feels they can be a part of as well. So whether you're a fighter in the cage, or you're a teacher or a doctor or a stay-at-home mom, we're all fighters in our own way.
It's been eye-opening for me to hear some of the personal mental struggles these elite athletes battle. We often see their smiles and elation when they step up to the podium or raise their championship belt in victory. But like all of us, they too are the sum of all parts, including the part that is most vulnerable, a side that often stays hidden. One thing that Dr. Harry, the sports psychologist, said at the end of our interview stuck with me. I had asked him how, having journeyed with these athletes through their darkest moments, if there is anything he wishes to tell ordinary people like me.
I would say don't just support them when they're winning. I think even more so support them when they are not doing well, because what you see is only the surface performance. You don't see the work they put through. You don't see the disappointment that they feel. You only see what you see on the television or what the news reports. You don't really see the struggles. You don't really see the pain. You don't really see the self-doubt, and all these things are real. They're like you and me, they're somebody's son, they're somebody's daughter, they're somebody's spouse. They are as human as we are. And I think sometimes, particularly with social media, with news reporting, we're a lot more harsh. I don't know why we should be that way. So I would say to the fans, to the people out there, support your athletes, even more so when they're not winning, because it means a lot more to them than when they actually win. It's really in those tough moments when those support come, it can be really encouraging and it can really lift them up.
If you're interested to hear my full interview with Ting Wen, it's up on YouTube. Search for it on the CNA channel. And if you have a story to share with us, let us know. You can leave a comment on Spotify or write to us at cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg. This story was written and produced by me, Tiffany Ang, edited by Crispina Robert. Our social media editor is Joanne Chan, and sound mixing by Ken Delbridge.